Welcome back everyone to another PC-12 POV flight, this time in an NG. I'm just taxiing out here for takeoff at Topeka, and this will be just another short leg for maintenance from Topeka over to the Johnson County Executive Airport in Olathe, Kansas. That's OJC. So if you've watched my videos before, you're familiar with this leg, although this time I'm going eastbound instead of west. So I'm just taxiing out here for takeoff. I'm going to do an intersection departure on runway 31. And normally you don't want to do intersection departures, but 31 is a particularly long runway, and it's fine to do that in the PC-12. And I'm empty this day, so just me in the airplane. This was after kind of a long day of flying. You can see all the dead bugs on the windshield. I flew a bunch of low altitude legs down through Oklahoma and southern Kansas on this day, so picked up a lot of dead bugs, unfortunately, and I think we're going to add a few more on this short low altitude leg over to OJC. But just a quick hop, 15-20 minutes over there, so just running the taxi checklist here. This was a very windy, gusty day out of the west-northwest, and I am IFR. I'm going to be IFR here once I get airborne, but I'm going to stay well below those cloud bases. I'm just going up to 5,000, so those bases are much higher than that. And I think there was an issue with the ACS. I think they had to replace a valve, if I remember right, but this was years ago. So anyway, just going to make the right turn here and taxi out to 31. Just getting my frequencies set for center in the standby. Center has jurisdiction over this airspace. There's no approach control way out west of the Kansas City Metro out here in Topeka, so center has jurisdiction. And I'm going to make a crosswind takeoff here. The wind was 280, gusting to 3.4. So a lot of left to right crosswind on the runway, so I'm going to hold the ailerons to the left end of the wind as I accelerate. It's not normally something you need to do in the PC-12, but on a particularly windy day like this, you do want to use that crosswind technique. So coming up on the hold short lines here, and I'm already cleared for takeoff. So I'm just going to clear right and clear left, turning on the probe and the windshield heat there, getting the external lights turned on, making sure there's nobody on final out there or on the runway. There's a lot of runway down that direction because this is an intersection takeoff. And then clearing left there as well, of course. And just running the before takeoff checklist. So particularly on an intersection departure, it's important to confirm that you are turning the right direction because you're not going to see the runway designator numbers. So as soon as I line up on the center line, I want to make sure my heading is roughly 310 degrees. That, let me know I turn the right direction. And I'm just easing the power up onto the governor there and then setting takeoff torque. Got that left aileron in. I'm tracking the center line with the rudder pedals. Airspeed alive. Rotate about 80 knots. Take the aileron correction out. Positive rate on the brakes to stop the mains, and then we'll go gear up. Yaw damp engaged, and the taxi and landing lights off. And I'm pitching for VY about 120 here to 1,000 feet. Pretty bumpy down low this day. And I'm just clearing right at 400 feet. I'm going to start my right-hand turn on course to the east. So off we go. Nice weather on this day other than the wind. So I'm switching over to Kansas City Center there, checking on. Still hand flying in the turn. And in the NG, you do not have to reduce power to 1,000 feet to climb power. You just leave it at takeoff torque. Pretty much all the way up, just minding your ITT, of course. So I'll get turned around to the east here. I'll reset the altimeters when the center gives me the current altimeter settings right there. And we'll just get turned on course. I'll set the autopilot right there. And on low altitude legs like this, you just want to leave the inertial separator open unless your operator wants you to close it to save some fuel. But like I said, I'm only climbing up to 5,000 feet, so I'm going to leave that open for the duration of the flight. Just running the after takeoff checklist here. And then you also want to leave your recog lights flashing just because there is a lot of VFR traffic down at these lower altitudes. So you're not being separated from VFR traffic even though you're IFR. So you definitely want to keep your eyes peeled when you're in visual conditions anytime. So we're just climbing up to 5 here on course. Starting to smooth out a little bit. And we'll let the autopilot level off. We're already at 5,000 feet. Looking off in the direction of Lawrence, Kansas right there. So again, this was an empty leg, single pilot for maintenance. So it's just me and the airplane, part 91. And if I remember right, the wind was 280 with gusts to 3.4. And I'm landing on runway 17 at OJC. The main runway is 1836, but they had it closed for resurfacing, so they were using the East Parallel Taxiway, which is Taxiway Bravo, as a temporary runway. And when they do that, they'll rename the runway 17 just to differentiate between the two, so that you're not expecting the longer main runway. You know it's a different runway than what you're used to. So they're the same magnetic heading, but it's 17 when it's the taxiway, so that you know it's not 18 basically. So direct crosswind, pretty close to a direct crosswind on 17. So I'm definitely going to be landing flaps 15 this day. So I'm already checked on there, I think, with Kansas City approach. I've got the ATIS at OJC, got the altimeter set, and of course it's just going to be a visual approach on this day. It's good VFR, so nothing to set up in the FMS or brief and approach or anything like that. Just going to be a right base entry to 17. And this is the Honeywell Apex Primus system in the NG, which is full FMS, so it's very nice. It's got a lot of bells and whistles. It's the same system they use in the PC-24 Pilatus jet. And it's highly automated. The NG is a pleasure to fly. It does a lot of the work for the pilot. The NGX is even more automated. So we're just cruising along here, coming up on Lawrence, and just getting my frequencies set. And while we're up here in the cruise, I'm going to make a shameless plug. I just worked pretty hard on developing my own custom checklist for the PC-12, so I'm going to be releasing that to members. It'll be free to members, so if you're interested in using a PC-12 checklist, if you're transitioning into the PC-12, if you're going to flight safety or SimCom soon, or if you're a sim enthusiast and you want to try to mimic real-world operations, I've based this checklist on exactly how it works for me in the airplane. So I think it's a pretty good checklist. It's similar to the one I'm using there, but I've made quite a few changes to various checklists that I've used over the years, and I think it's pretty handy dandy. So if you're into that, it's $4.99 USD to join the channel, and you get access to the checklist, the PC-12 Flows course, where I walk through every flow in the airplane from takeoff and landing, and basically chalk to chalk. And also the Systems Bootcamp course, the Emergency Procedures course, and a bunch of other goodies that I have in there. So that's the end of my plug. We'll get back to the flight here. I'll leave a link below for those that want to join the channel. So that's Lawrence, Kansas, right down there to the left, and we're about halfway there. Again, this leg goes pretty fast. You can see on that moving map, you can kind of see it anyway, that my route of flight will take me right through the New Century Class Delta airspace. New Century is a fairly busy airport just to the west of OJC, so when you're coming from the west, you have to kind of plow through their pattern. So you try to stay above it so that you don't get tangled up with their traffic. Remember that even though I'm IFR, I'm not being separated from VFR traffic at New Century, so I certainly will be getting traffic advisories from ATC if they have their head in the game down there and they're not too busy, but it's still my responsibility to look outside for those guys. So just keep your eyes peeled, keep the recogs flashing. Just using ForeFlight there I think I was trying to find the AirInc frequency for KCAC. It's always a good idea to make an in-range call to these FBOs when you're 10 or 15 or 20 minutes out, just to let them know that you'll be on their ramp soon, so they can expect you and have the line service guys ready to marshal you in and roll out that red carpet. And so I think I just made my in-range call to them. So I'll definitely, like I mentioned, be landing flaps 15. You really don't want to have any more than flaps 15 when you have a lot of crosswind and wind shear like this, because you want to approach at a faster airspeed. You want to have a lower angle of attack. You want to have more airflow over the control surfaces to have better authority. So flaps 15 for sure on a day like this. So taxiway Bravo I think is 40 feet wide, so I'm landing on a 40-foot wide runway, and I think it was about 3,000 feet in length, give or take. So not a short field by any means, but definitely not amply long, and definitely quite narrow. So when you have a crosswind like this, you really need to make sure that you're on center line. So I'm already kind of thinking through that, and I know I'm going to land flaps 15. You have to have strong legs in the PC-12 and crosswinds because the airplane is very heavy in yaw, so it takes a lot of leg strength to kick the nose around and get it lined up with the runway. So you just have to expect that on landing. Your eyes won't lie to you. Just watch the nose, and if it's not lined up with the center line yet, push a little harder on that rudder pedal. It takes a lot of strength, but you've got to get it straightened out so you don't sideload the gear. And then just drop that upwind wing, and so you don't drift off the center line. It does well in crosswind, but it does have a big boxy fuselage, and it does want to weather vane into the wind. So you really have to use a lot of rudder pressure to get the nose aligned with the runway. So you can see there I made a little left turn. I went into heading mode. I'm cleared for the visual approach to 1.7, not 1.8 at OJC. Hey, there's me and my phone, just making sure the GoPro's on. And I'll start descending here in a minute. I think I'm trying to stay just a little bit high to stay above the New Century traffic. As many of us who have flown for years, I've had many close calls with mid-airs, and it's kind of one of my biggest fears, to be honest, so I'm very careful about traffic. That is not a way I want to go. So I'm just selecting vertical speed mode there and dialing down a little descent. And I've already got the airport in sight, but only because I learned to fly at OJC, so I'm very familiar with the landmarks and the roads around that airport. Normally I probably wouldn't be able to pick out an airport this far out and get set up for a visual approach just yet, but since I'm so familiar with the area, I was able to this day. So I've since moved to the West Coast, and I don't fly in this area much anymore, but it's a great area to fly. You definitely get good in crosswinds for sure. I know all my Kansas flying buddies can tell you that. So just getting frequencies set, again starting a little descent here, and again I'm going to make a long right base entry here to 1.7. I've got a really strong westerly tailwind right now, so this is a good example of when you want to start a very early shallow turn onto final so you don't overshoot and get cross controlled and by the farm. You can see New Century off to the right there, so I'm just going to cross their 1.8 center line. I'm trying to stay high up above that final. But the NG is a pleasure to fly. They put Flettner tabs on the ailerons, so the control forces are much lighter in roll than the Legacy. So it's a very noticeable difference. It's lighter to fly. There's the 1.8 big fat juicy runway down there at New Century that I'm crossing. So we're just coming on down the hill here. And I actually had a bird strike on this landing. So I made a video about this. It was just the landing portion of this video years ago, just to show the crosswind landing with the bird strike. It was a small bird. It didn't do any damage at all to the airplane. It went through the prop, and I couldn't even find any evidence of it hitting the prop. So it definitely didn't do any damage, thank goodness. But you'll see it on the landing rollout here. There were a lot of birds in the vicinity of the airport this day, which is not what you want to see. So a lot of migratory birds this time of year. Starting to bump around a little bit as we get to the lower altitude, and I am sitting up straight in my seat for this landing. Strong crosswind on a narrow, relatively short runway, so I don't want to land any more than flaps 15. 1.8 is also downhill. So I'm landing with no headwind component, with a faster ref speed because I have less flaps, and then I'm also landing on a relatively short runway. So again, it's not a short field, but I am going to use some reverse thrust for this landing because I want to save my brakes. So I'm clear to land there. Just turned on the taxi and landing lights. Checked final to the left to make sure there was nobody on final for 1.7. I've got the gear down 3 green, flaps are 15. That's where they'll stay. start a lazy turn onto final here in a minute because I have all that westerly tailwind. So I'm just running the before landing checklist here. It's always a good idea to use the checklist no matter how well you know the airplane, because you will forget things. I mean, everybody's going to get complacent sometimes, so always use that checklist. Don't be too cool for checklists, kids. Trying to get that bug off the windshield that was distracting me. So here we go, nice gradual turn onto final. And I'm intentionally going to overshoot the extended runway center line because remember, I'm landing on the taxiway, not the runway. So you'll see me kind of fly through the runway center line here. And I'm landing on that taxiway to the left of the runway, which is, it's kind of hard to see this far out, but it's we're lined up on it right there. And you're going to see a lot of wind correction angle in here. So you'll notice we didn't have much crab in on base, which is not a good sign if there's any wind, because that means that the wind is perpendicular to the runway. So if you don't crab on base and there's wind, you're going to crab on final, which means you're going to have to land with a crosswind. So you can see a big wind correction angle in here. So just get it trimmed up, find that wind correction angle that keeps you lined up on the center line, and just hold it. Don't do too much here. The key is to just let the airplane ride through the shear. Keep it stabilized. Don't make any big changes. Don't jockey the PCL. And it does very well in crosswind. You can see the big flashing white X there on the 1/8 threshold to indicate that it's closed. So as soon as I cross the threshold, I'm going to kick left rudder to line up and then drop that right wing to land on the right main first, and then the left main, and then the nose. So right here I'm going to start kicking out, dropping that right wing, PCL to idle. There's the right main, left main, bird strike right there, and the nose. And again, I'm downhill. I'm going to use some reverse thrust here. So again, this is a good example of when to use reverse thrust in the PC-12. When you're downhill with no headwind component and you're landing at reduced flaps, so your ref speed is higher, and you don't have ample runway, go ahead and use the reverse thrust, and it helps save your brakes. So that exit down at the end is closed. So I'm going to 180 on the runway here per ATC, and we're going to taxi back up to about midfield. That's the only open step taxiway to get off the runway. So when you have a bird strike, you do want to let ATC know so that they can have airport ops go out and remove the carcass from the runway. That is FOD. It's a FOD risk, so you don't want somebody else to hit it or ingest it into an engine. And you can fill out a report for the FAA to let them know you hit a bird, and but like I said, luckily it didn't do any damage to the airplane. But it did damage the bird, and I felt bad about that. Poor little guy. Couldn't really do anything to avoid him there. So you can see the barricades on the left. They've got that runway kind of torn up. Some construction equipment over there. And as soon as there are some more birds. They are everywhere on this day. So as soon as I make this turn off the runway here, I'll clean up and run the after landing checklist. And more birds. Yikes. You can see why I hit one. So we're just taxiing across the closed runway here. I'll turn the external lights off, set those how I want them. And flaps up, windshield heat and probe heat off. I'll recenter all three trims, clear left, clear right, pull the checklist out here. And we'll taxi into KCAC. And remember, you do have a 2-minute cool down period from the time you select ground idle to the time you shut the engine down, just so you don't shock cool the engine. But we'll have no problem getting that in on this taxi today. Looking across the barricades for my Marshall, and that is an empty ramp. I think it was too windy for the weekend warriors this day. Understandable. So we're going to make this left turn around and park to the south. I'm turning off the oxygen lever, the EPS, the taxi light, and my noise canceling right there on my headset. And I'm keeping an eye on that right wingtip because it gets pretty tight on that fence when you park in the first spot here at KCAC. So you don't want to clip that fence. So you got to keep a close eye on that. And I think that's my rental car being pulled around plane side. You got to love that. So We'll pull in here and stop, set the parking brake, shut the engine down. I think I inhibited the ACS because that valve was having a problem. I'm going to note the fuel burn for the log. And as soon as that, there you go, the chocks are in, we'll get the parking brake released. I'll run the shutdown checklist, turn off the batteries, tidy up, and go home. And that's it. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.